Daniel Parker had one shot, one interview, one chance to turn his life around. And now, because of one decision, he had just lost it. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he sprinted through the city streets, dodging pedestrians, gripping his resume so tightly it crumpled in his fist. He was already 15 minutes late. No company wanted an employee who couldn't even show up on time. But what was he supposed to do? Just walk past the elderly woman struggling with her groceries? Ignore her as she gasped for breath, nearly collapsing under the weight of the bags? Number he couldn't, so he had helped, and now he was paying the price. By the time he reached the towering glass skyscraper, his chest was heaving. The receptionist barely spared him a glance. The interviews are over. Daniel swallowed hard. Please, I had an emergency. Just let me speak to someone. She sighed, shaking her head. I'm sorry, sir, but a new voice interrupted. Let him in. Daniel turned, startled. An older woman stood nearby, her sharp gaze locked onto him. But this wasn't just any woman. His stomach dropped. It was her. The woman from earlier. The one whose groceries he had carried. She wasn't struggling now. She wasn't frail. She stood tall, poised, dressed in an elegant suit that screamed authority. And then she smiled. You missed your interview for me, she said, tilting her head. Let's see if you made the right choice. Daniel's breath caught, because in that moment he realized he hadn't just helped an elderly woman. He had just saved his interview with the CEO of the entire company. Daniel's legs felt like they had turned to stone. The CEO. He had missed his chance, only to come face to face with the very person who could decide his fate. The receptionist's eyes widened in shock, suddenly sitting up straighter. Ms. Harrington, I didn't realize. The woman, Ms. Eleanor Harrington, as in the legendary founder of Harrington Enterprises, waved a hand dismissively. That's because I didn't plan on making a surprise entrance, she said smoothly. Then, turning back to Daniel, she gestured toward the glass doors leading into the boardroom. Shall we? Daniel swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. As he followed her inside, his mind raced. He had spent weeks preparing for this interview, researching the company, practicing his answers, dressing as professionally as he could afford. And yet, the moment that mattered most had nothing to do with his resume. It had come down to a single decision on the street. The boardroom was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline. A few remaining executives glanced up in surprise as Ms. Harrington led Daniel straight to the head of the table and took her seat. She folded her hands, studying him like he was an interesting puzzle. Tell me, Mr. Parker, do you know what this company values most? Daniel cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. Innovation, integrity, leadership. He knew those were the textbook answers, the ones plastered all over their website. But Ms. Harrington simply raised an eyebrow. Integrity, you say? Daniel hesitated. Was this a test? Yes, ma'am. She tapped her fingers against the table, then smiled. Then, congratulations. Daniel blinked. What? You're hired. His breath hitched. Just like that? Ms. Harrington leaned forward, her sharp eyes twinkling with something unreadable. You were willing to risk your own success to help someone in need, with no guarantee of reward. That's real integrity. And I don't need an hour-long interview to recognize when I've found someone worth keeping. Daniel's heart pounded. Was this really happening? He had walked in thinking he had lost everything, only to leave with the very job he had dreamed of. Ms. Harrington stood, offering her hand. Welcome to Harrington Enterprises, Mr. Parker. As Daniel shook it, his grip firm despite the shock still coursing through him, one thought echoed in his mind. One choice had changed his entire life. Daniel stepped out of the boardroom in a daze, his mind struggling to catch up with reality. 1 minute, he had been convinced he had lost everything. The next, he had been handed an opportunity people would kill for. The receptionist who had dismissed him earlier now stared at him with wide eyes, her fingers hovering over the keyboard like she wasn't sure if she should apologize or congratulate him. He simply gave her a small nod and walked past, still trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, hands still slightly unsteady. A text from his best friend, Ryan. Ryan. So, how'd it go? Did they even let you in? Daniel exhaled, his lips curling into a stunned, breathless smile. Daniel. I think I just got the job. The three little dots popped up instantly as Ryan typed back. Ryan. What? How? Weren't you late? Daniel glanced back toward the boardroom, where Ms. Harrington was now deep in discussion with her executives, as if she hadn't just changed his life in the span of 5 minutes. Daniel. Long story, but let's just say, helping a stranger might have been the best decision I ever made. As he stepped into the elevator, the door sliding shut in front of him, he took a deep breath. Today wasn't just the start of a job, it was the start of something bigger. And it all began with a single choice. As Daniel stepped out of the towering skyscraper, the cool breeze hit his face, but he barely felt it. His entire world had shifted in a matter of hours. One moment, he had been another desperate job seeker. Now he was an employee at one of the most powerful companies in the country. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Ryan. Ryan. Dude, you're killing me. Tell me everything. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. His fingers hovered over the screen, but before he could type back, a sleek black car pulled up in front of him. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Ms. Harrington sitting in the back seat, watching him with the same piercing gaze she had in the boardroom. Walk with me, Mr. Parker, she said, gesturing for him to get in. Daniel hesitated for half a second before slipping into the passenger seat. The door shut with a soft click, and the car pulled into traffic. Ms. Harrington studied him for a moment before speaking. You think today was about luck, don't you? Daniel blinked. Wasn't it? She smirked, shaking her head. Luck is for gamblers. I don't gamble, Mr. Parker. I invest. Daniel frowned slightly. Invest? You impressed me today, not because of your resume, but because you acted on principle, not personal gain. That's the kind of person I want in my company. She tilted her head. But I have to ask, was that a one-time thing, or is that who you are? Daniel held her gaze. I'd like to believe it's who I am. Her smirk deepened. Good. She tapped on the car's sleek dashboard screen and a file popped up with his name on it. Because I'm not offering you the job you applied for. Daniel's stomach twisted. You're not? No, she said simply. I'm offering you something better. His breath caught. She leaned back, watching him carefully. I need people I can trust in my inner circle, Daniel. People who don't just chase success, but understand responsibility. She paused. You're sharp, you're driven. But most importantly, you know how to make the right choice, even when no one's watching. Daniel barely breathed. What? What are you saying? She smiled. I'm saying, welcome to the executive program. His heart nearly stopped. The executive program? The elite training ground for future leaders of the company? He had walked in today hoping for an entry-level position. Now he was being groomed for something much, much bigger. His hands tightened into fists against his knees as the weight of it all sank in. One small act of kindness, one missed interview. And now? He was about to step into a future he never saw coming. Daniel sat frozen in the leather seat, his mind racing. This had to be a dream, a mistake. People didn't just stumble into life-changing opportunities like this. But, he finally managed, his voice uncertain, I don't have the experience for an executive program. Ms. Harrington chuckled, her sharp eyes twinkling with amusement. Experience can be gained, but character? That's much harder to find. Daniel swallowed hard. He had spent weeks preparing for a low-level position, convincing himself that even getting his foot in the door would be enough. And now, he was being thrown into something far beyond what he had imagined. What if I fail? He asked before he could stop himself. Ms. Harrington smirked. Then you'll learn. And if you're the man I think you are, you'll get back up. She tilted her head. Unless you'd rather walk away? Daniel exhaled, his mind a storm of uncertainty and excitement. Walk away. Number not a chance. He met her gaze, his jaw tightening with determination. I'm in. A slow smile spread across Ms. Harrington's face. Good. She tapped the screen again, sending his information forward. Then, you start Monday. The car pulled to a smooth stop outside his apartment. As Daniel stepped out, he felt different, like the ground beneath him had shifted in a way he couldn't yet explain. This morning, he had woken up just another guy looking for a job. Now, he was walking into a future he never expected. And it all started because he made a simple choice to help someone when no one else would. Sometimes the smallest moments lead to the biggest changes. And Daniel Parker had just stepped into a life he never saw coming.